Let's talk about how to build a villain using the example of Jung Han from Yakuza 6. This is a really interesting example because they completely fail to build him as a villain. The techniques they use are the same techniques they use everywhere else, but they don't work here, and we can learn a lot by looking at how they don't work. The best thing about this is that we know why they're set up like they are. This isn't them just randomly failing. They're very good at making villains. This is them failing on purpose, and it's not for a narrative reason. It's for budgetary constraints. You see, it's very, very obvious, at least to my psychic mind-reading powers, that these scenes were almost done. Or maybe they were done. And then word from on high came down, wait, we need to compress this 30-hour game into a 10-hour game, this 30-hour narrative into a 10-hour narrative. Can you rearrange these scenes? Can you change how these work? Can you change the timbre of this? Can you make him into an anti-hero instead of into a villain? And they were like, well, sure, we need to redo the scenes, though. And the guy was like, there's no budget for that. Just hack it together. And that's what we get as a result. What we see is they're using monster builder techniques on Jung Han. Like, he burns people's faces off, he murders people, he runs drug rings and prostitution rings, and wait, those are all too monstrous for the villain we actually need, so let's pull it back. So every time they go to make him do something monstrous, they pull it back. But unfortunately, that doesn't leave him with the anti-hero traits that they wanted. It leaves him with nothing. Now, they do try and add in the heroic traits, but it's so forced that it ends up sabotaging the way the scenes work, and we'll see that as it goes on. So, in the end, Jung Han's whole arc is completely sabotaged, and it just doesn't work. Now, the reason I'm so sure, the reason I am 100% sure that these scenes were done and then the narrative was shifted, and they couldn't be rewritten due to budgetary constraints, is because these scenes are completely incompatible with Jung Han's plot twists. And I'm not going to spoil those here. I might spoil them at the end of the video, but I'm not going to spoil them here. But let's just say that when later on you learn what Jung Han has been trying to do, what his aims are, what his goals are, and the things he actually did and does, this set of scenes actually disproves it. Like, he can't want those things because you clearly showed us that he didn't. He can't do those things because you clearly show us that he doesn't. And that just shows me that at some point, the narrative was shifted and they didn't do a full rewrite. They couldn't afford to do a full rewrite. These scenes are obviously in service of a different narrative, a narrative that required Jung Han to be a monster. Well, let's go ahead and watch these scenes. We'll get to it. I am going to have to do some minor spoilers up front. We came here to the big city. We brought along 2 of the random thugs with us because they wanted to come. And we're looking for the guy we think is the baby's father. He's a host, so we're going over to host clubs. One of the host clubs is owned by our friend, or was 3 years ago. It's named the Stardust. We say, hey, I'm Kazuma Kiryu. Can you go tell your boss we're here? And the bouncer says, ha ha, no. So we don't get in. We turn around, and there's our friend standing 3 feet away. We're like, oh, what a surprise. And he's like, yeah, I don't usually come by here, but the plot needed me to. I sold it. I sold the Stardust. Someone bought it from us, so we've just been bumming around ever since. Let's go have some yakiniku. And that's where we are. Now, I'd love to show you those scenes, but unfortunately they are in-engine cutscenes, so they don't show up in this list. Oh, no! And that's going to happen a couple more times. It's unfortunate because those scenes are quite important. But it's okay. I'm sure that you enjoy my recreations, right? All right, so here we are. We're going to watch this scene. We're going to be interrupting it constantly because I'm going to be explaining the techniques they used, how they chopped them down, how they build them up, alternatives, that sort of stuff. There's no point in watching it through all the way to see the terribly flawed execution first. We'll just see it all at the same time. So one of the things I did in the previous arc-changing video is I said that you can build up your new villain by having them steal thunder from your old villain. And that's what they're going to try and do with Jung Han. So here is the old villain. Here's the bouncer that was a little bit rude to us. And here's Jung Han stealing his thunder. So, if you remember in the arc changing episode when they built up the Enforcer correctly, they made a real badass. The face reveal was actually a big beat. They hid his face for a while, then they revealed it. And they revealed it right when our tension was highest, because we'd been through a boss fight. We knocked down the boss. The boss was cowering in front of us, begging for his life, threatening us, saying he'll bring all of the syndicate down on our heads. And then here comes all of the syndicate. He says, yeah, I represent all of the syndicate, and you're just a pebble. You random boss dude. So that means that all of our energies that we put into beating this boss, everything we have invested in this boss, all of his cowardice, gets funneled into this new villain, and it makes him feel really powerful. He immediately adopts the role of new villain. It's a very strong way to set a villain up, but there's no thunder here to steal. It's just a dude that had eyeshadow on and was slightly rude to a Yakuza. That's not... I don't feel anything from that. Oh no, the slightly rude guy has a boss. Ooh. I guess he has bad subordinates. Ooh. We also mentioned in that previous video how every single time that Enforcer was doing some kind of grandstand, some dialogue that was supposed to make him feel really dangerous and really tough, he would first make sure there was enough energy in the scene. He'd reveal that he knew something nobody else did, or he'd force the boss to kowtow or whatever else, right? You build up that energy so that when he says something dangerous, it's backed by the fact that he can actually do stuff. He actually has authority over a person that we care about or knows secrets that matter to us. Otherwise, you come off as a blowhard, and that's exactly what happens here. Jung Han comes off as a blowhard. Now, I think that a lot of people are probably okay with this, because Jung Han was a hero for 100 hours in a different game, and if you bring those emotions into this game, maybe you're going to feel like he already has all the cred he needs, but within this game, this segment feels thin, makes him feel weak. But even if a villain feels thin and weak, you can still build him up by having him do properly villainous things. So let's see what they do. Even his close-up isn't as close. They know they don't have the energy to support it. That'll do. Yeah, okay. He's a villain. This is a monster building technique. Burning someone's face off is a monster building technique. Now, it's not like truly depraved levels where he's not burning the face off of innocent children or anything. This is a guy that's kind of a dick. But it's definitely monster tier. He is unstable. He is aggressive. He has no respect for his own people. He's a sadist. He will mutilate his own men. That's just to make a point. That's monster grade villain. And then someone came along and said, "Oh wait, our bad. He's actually the hero in another game, so we can't make him into a villain. Could you back that down?" So let's see how they back it down. The first way they back it down is they use mostly reaction shots. Reaction shots aren't necessarily bad, but they're usually used to tell us something that can't be shown is bad. So for example, if you've got someone in a game like this where you're not allowed to show things like drugs explicitly, you might have someone doing drugs at the bottom of the screen where you can just kind of vaguely make out that their head is moving and stuff, and you can have everybody go, "Oh my god, he's doing drugs," because you can't show the drugs. But you sure as shit can show someone get their face burned off. That's a lot less violent than drugs somehow. So the fact that they don't show this and instead rely entirely on shots, reaction shots, implies that they didn't want you to really absorb what's actually going on here. And what's actually going on here is he is permanently burning someone's face off. Oh. Here it is. There it is. The 1 second where Jung Han is allowed to be a monster villain. Alright, we're done. That's it. The guy never shows up again. It's never mentioned again. Even in the in-game cutscene of us walking out of the bar, we don't step over him. We don't call an ambulance. He's just not there. They remove him from the story because they don't want Jung Han to come off as a villain. So they don't give Jung Han the anti-hero traits he would need in order to be an anti-hero. Instead, they try and give him the monster traits and then realize they don't want him to have the monster traits and try to get you to forget that they gave him those monster traits. And that's just not working out. So let me give you an example of how this would normally go in a Yakuza game. That bouncer is Jung Han's lieutenant, Jung Han's dragon. Jung Han brings him everywhere. He's in all the fights that we get in with Jung Han. And in all of those fights, every time Jung Han shows up, there's his bouncer next to him, missing half his face. Still completely loyal to Jung Han. That tells us, holy shit, Jung Han is a sort of villain where if he burns your face off, you thank him. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, my version is so much better than their version. I am going to say that, but that's because I know that their version was sabotaged on purpose. I think that all of us could come up with a better version of this that makes Jung Han into a more convincing villain because they specifically decided not to do any of those things. So any suggestion would be better than what does happen, because what does happen is sweeping it under the rug.
埋め合わせをさせていただけませんか桐生一馬さん
Bum, bum, bum. Exciting, right? Alright, so after that, there is a cutscene where we walk out of the room. Unfortunately, I can't show you the cutscene where we reach the Stardust. You can go do other stuff in the game. These two cutscenes aren't back-to-back. But eventually you reach the Stardust, and the top of the Stardust is basically empty. Jung Han is there. He explains that he's moved all the business into the basement because he's part of the Korean mafia and he's running illegal stuff in the basement. So, of course, then he brings us down into the basement to reveal his evil, villainous activities that are definitely going to convince us that he is a monster. Let's see how that works. No, it's not. I mean, it's certainly not like a church social, but we normally run hostess clubs. The big difference between this and a hostess club is that there's music playing, and I guess the guys are half naked instead of the girls. He's basically running a male strip club. Is it different in Japan? Is that considered more vulgar there? I don't know. But what I can tell you is that initially, this was intended to be a lot darker. It must have been. There's no other reason to explain it, because he could run this upstairs. It's just guys with no shirts on. We do that all the time. And it's like, oh, there's a girl with a glass of champagne holding it up and giggling. Oh, no, that girl hugged a guy. Oh, gosh, this sure is vulgar. Oh my gosh, can you believe how depraved the Korean mafia is? Clearly, these are supposed to be things like, oh, she's doing lines of coke. Something like that. And they had to back it down, probably partly because I don't think they're allowed to actually show anything like that in the Yakuza games, and partly because they don't want Jung Han to be doing anything too villainous. If he's actually running like a drug ring and a sex trafficking ring, we would feel that he was a monster, and we're not supposed to. We're supposed to hopefully feel that he's an anti-hero, but we already know they couldn't actually fund that. They couldn't actually fund the rewrites. So instead, they just edited around whatever they had, and they ended up with this scene which kind of makes it feels like he's running a Chippendales bar. It's skeezy, but it's not villainous. So, you know, I mean, we have run bathhouses in other games, like what do they call them, soap lands in other games. We have run soap lands. Just to hammer that home, we have run basically whorehouses in other games. This is nothing in the Yakuza franchise, unless you believe that for some reason topless guys is worse than prostitution. I don't think anybody believes that. I think this is just botched because they didn't have the money to rewrite it. There is one thing about this I do like. The name. Not the Stardust, this part. Haha, get it? Because it's got some snakes. That I like. Anyway, there's some in-game cutscenes, which I will pantomime for you. He says, Kazuma Kiryu, you destroyed the Jingwan Mafia, the Korean Mafia. I am the new Jingwan Mafia. I am going to prove that the new Jingwan Mafia is better than the old Jingwan Mafia and is ready for the future by getting into honest fisticuff battle with you. And you're like, no, I just want to ask about this dude. Have you seen this dude? Maybe I have. But you'll have to get into honest fisticuffs battle before I'll tell you. I guess I'll just go ask someone else. Bye? No! What a coward! You, the man in the tan suit that nobody has ever known, and I certainly don't know, and I've certainly never heard of before. You, random tan suit guy. You must think that your buddy's a coward, don't you? Oh, no! You're so evil, I'm gonna punch you! Come on, let's get in the ring and we'll fight! And that's how this starts. We already know that Yuta can't fight. He's been spectacularly shit at it in all of the combination fighting scenes. So him getting into a boxing ring to fight someone, obviously going to be a complete fail. Now this is obviously set up such that Yuta would be permanently removed from the story. This is obviously set up so that the Jungi Han will cripple Yuta or kill him. And it'll just prove how monstrous he is and make us want to fight him. Let's see what they did when they realized that they had to back down on the monster stuff. There is one thing I really like about this, though. These scenes here where we're getting punched, this is not scenes from Yuta's perspective. This is clearly scenes from Kiryu's perspective, thinking about Yuta's perspective. I think that's great. Oh my gosh, he got punched in a boxing ring. Gosh, we get in real early, don't we? We don't even let Yuta lose first. Okay, so the way this is framed is supposed to have some emotional impact. We're clearly supposed to think, oh, that bastard, he beat up Yuta. Oh, I had the sound off. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. All there was pa-chow, pa-chow. So we're supposed to think like, oh, that bastard, he beat up Yuta. Oh, Yuta got into a fair fight in a boxing ring, and he got punched some. This is like the least interesting thing that's ever happened to Yuta. Not 20 minutes ago, in-game, some other member of Yuta's little gang took the exact same beating. But in that case, it was from a friend. Nagumo was the one doing the beating, and it was to save his ass. So we already know that this sort of thing is so everyday that sometimes after it happens, you thank them. This is not a beating that matters. This is like, oh, Yuta got into a fair fist fight and lost, just like the other 15 fair fights he's been in and lost. We're supposed to feel something about this? It makes no sense. The only way we could feel something about this is if Yuta is crippled or killed, because that's like, oh, this isn't like the other fights. The stakes are higher. But he's not. He's just lying there. He doesn't seem to be too badly damaged, just knocked out. Moreover, we're moving very, very fast. We get in before he even falls down. And then we shout at him and interrupt the fight. So, I already mentioned this. At the end of a fight, if you interrupt the conclusion of the fight, you absorb the influence of the fight. Like, for example, when we were chasing down that villain in the you know, we beat up the purple jacketed boss in the Ark video, and he was cringing in front of us, begging for his life, threatening us with the force of all of his bosses, and we were about to decide what to do with him. In steps the new enforcer and steals all that thunder. This is the exact opposite, but in the reverse order. Instead of allowing the boss here to beat up Yuta, finish off Yuta, we're stepping in to steal the boss's thunder, which weakens the boss. We're weakening Jungi Han by stealing his thunder. So that's not really going to make us think more of Jungi Han. We don't need Kiryu to be stronger here. We need Jungi Han to be stronger here. We need to believe Jungi Han has some kind of importance. But of course, they couldn't let Jungi Han actually do anything. So they don't. Oh, but we have to say that he must be some kind of villain, right? Let's find out how they can sell us on the fact that he's a villain.
どれだけお前にいたぶられようが、最後まで前を向いたまま倒れた。こいつはこいつなりの強さってのを証明したはずだ。
Oh no, he's going to... What? Check his pulse? Gently caress him? Maybe we're supposed to think he can snap Yuta's neck? It's not... This is not a violent action. This is not like, oh my god, he's going to reach down gently towards a downed person? Why would we even think that this is going to lead to anything like a neck snap or anything like that, other than the fact that he already should have done it? This is like not... We're not getting sold on the idea that this is a villainous action. It's just a neutral action to someone that needs medical attention. It's like he's probably checking to make sure Yuta's okay. Who can tell? But no worries, because we interrupt him again to make sure he's got no power. How exciting. You are a very effective bait, friend. This scene, this line, proves that Jungi Han can't have done any of the things that he is supposed to have done in this game. And we'll explain that later when I get to the spoilers, but the fact that this line is here makes the rest of the game make no sense. Anyway, let's continue. So now is when we learn that Jungi Han, well, we already knew this, but Jungi Han is obsessed with us. Don't worry, he's going to give our friend medical treatment, so there's no stakes here. Don't worry. But he's going to rant about how he's going to defeat us in a fair fist fight. This is such a shallow, empty goal because we don't give a shit. Like, if we lose this fight, it means nothing to us. We do not care that we are considered a legend. We don't even care about winning or losing. The only reason we would want to win this fight is if there were some stakes, I guess. Like, I guess we don't want to get beat up, so I guess we would try and win because we don't like getting beat up, but there's no emotional investment in the idea that we want to continue being a legend. The idea here is that him defeating Yuta is the reason we want to beat him up, and they're going to try and hammer that home. But he's been beat up plenty before, lots of our friends have, it's not a big deal. I do love this though. Just the way they take off their shirts is so funny and ridiculous. So what are the stakes in this fight? The stakes are, if we win, we get told about Tatsukawa, and if we lose, we get told about Tatsukawa? There's no stakes here. I mean, it's literally exactly the same whether we win or lose. It's just a matter of how many bruises we get, I guess. We even know that if he does knock us down, he's gonna just have medics come and pick us up and put us on a an emergency bed. This is not. Oh, are we supposed to feel like that's deeply insulting to us? Fine. They nerfed it. Clearly, he was supposed to be much more badly injured, and they nerfed it. One of the things about nerfing things like this is that if you fail to keep the player's attention, it's much worse than just having a neutral area where the player just isn't interested. It's not like the player isn't going to twiddle their thumbs and wait for the cutscene to end. They're going to start picking on it. And that's exactly what I was doing the first time I was watching this, because I was totally uninvested. Oh, a fight with no stakes? Ooh. So I was like, okay, well, the screen space depth blur is awful. I'm very distracted. Oh my god, did they really create two boxers and then not rig their shoulders for boxing? And obviously those things are completely off topic. But if you can't keep the player's attention, if you let the tension get too low, if you sabotage the stakes and you don't actually land with any of the things you're trying to connect with, the player will just start to find your faults, and you're always gonna have faults.
Oh
yeah, exciting stuff. So the idea behind this is not too bad, because there's a lot of people who want the legend of the Dragon of Dojima to come to an end. It's sort of like an ongoing sub-thread. So the Korean Mafia also wanting that would make sense. But it never comes off, because it's always being constantly sabotaged in order to make sure he doesn't feel like a villain. There is one more scene here. This is they've already tried to make him into an anti-hero by making him so stand-up. They're like, oh, he's not going to harm anybody. He would never hurt anybody. He'll just punch him some, and that's pretty normal in this universe. And that didn't really make him into a hero. It just made him not a villain. So they're going to try here to prove that he's a hero by showing you how sportsmanlike he is. But again, all they end up doing is sabotaging the flow. And they make it so that it ends up so that he has nothing. He's neither hero nor villain. He's just flat and neutral. And worse, it makes the rest of the game make no sense. Let's see. This is a really annoying fight, by the way, because the only thing I like to do in Yakuza fights is throw chairs. And there were no chairs in that ring. Can you believe it? But this is good. This is a good send-off. You got the guy at your feet. You got the crowd going, that's a great way to celebrate the victory. So in order to use that energy, we interrupt the end of the fight, as always. Oh my gosh, he's going to threaten us. He's going to betray us. That bastard. This funnels all of the energy from the end of the fight into the new villain. Oh, Jungi Han. He's the villain. He's the one who set this up. He talked a big talk about being honorable, but at the end of the day, he's just a villain. Oh, wait, no. He's not. His dudes did it without his permission. So where does that energy go? It goes nowhere. They interrupted the end of the fight, then they revealed they didn't interrupt the end of the fight, and it's just like, whatever, I guess. It doesn't really matter. Oh, he's a hero? I don't believe it, because this energy doesn't make any sense. The flow of this doesn't work. It might have worked if the interruption had been a little bit more, had been staged such that the energy could actually flow, so that he could actually, like, maybe put himself on the line to save Yuta or something like that. And that would also help for later on with the plot points that we'll talk about in a little bit. But instead, he just says, hey, what assholes? Why am I screaming? And that's the end of that cutscene. So, I don't think that Jungi Han ended up being a very good villain, because it's very clear that they set this up with other things in mind and then ended up changing their mind halfway through. We have already talked about some of the ways this could have gone instead. We could talk about that more, but I already made a video on changing arcs, and a lot of that content is in the changing arcs video. I do want to talk about how this makes the narrative make no sense, so now we're going to start the spoilery section. If you don't care about the narrative of this game and about the mess behind the scenes that must have caused the problems here, you can just skip ahead. I'm going to spoil a lot of stuff, and it's not important if you're not interested. So, the twist later is that Jungi Han was the one who tried to kidnap the baby. He's the one who conspired together with Tatsukawa, who was a good friend of our daughter. He conspired with that guy to ambush her and steal the baby. That makes no sense for a lot of reasons, but here's the thing. He conspired to steal the baby because he wants the Chinese syndicate's owner. He wants that guy's son to assassinate him. So basically, the baby is the grandson of the Chinese syndicate king. And he wants the son of the Chinese syndicate king to kill the syndicate king. So he's going to threaten him with his baby. That person is Yuta, the guy he knocked out. So, Jungi Han is obsessed with us. He's made it very clear he's obsessed with us. He's tortured some of his people by burning their face off because he's so obsessed with us. He's obsessed with getting us to fight fairly. He knows everything there is to know about us because he would be. He's obsessed, right? So when he starts stalking our daughter, learning everything there is to know about her, bribing her friends, luring her to the city, and starting an attack on her to steal her baby. How did it miss him that we might get involved? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And now the answer here is clear. Either in the original draft he wasn't obsessed with us, or in the original draft he didn't do it. It was someone else. It makes zero sense for him to attack our daughter without realizing that she's our daughter. Furthermore, how could he know something like the secret child of the Chinese mafia boss and the secret child's secret child? It's like, yeah, I know that the Chinese mafia boss had a secret son, and I know that secret son had a secret son, but I don't know that that girl has the father who I'm obsessed with. That's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. The fact that he is obsessed with us and fighting us fairly means that he could not have attacked our daughter. It doesn't work. It just means that the narrative was originally something else. It's not like, ding, cinema sin. No, this is obviously not a plot hole. This is obviously a rewrite that could not be propagated properly. They couldn't actually finish rewriting it due to budget constraints. And the fact that Yuta is the guy he's trying to convince, and he knows Yuta is the guy he's trying to convince to assassinate the Chinese mafia boss, means that the rest of the scene also doesn't make any sense. We have this boy that we're going to make attack the Chinese mafia boss. We need him to be the assassin that kills off the Chinese mafia boss. Oh, I just beat him up in a fist fight because he's totally worthless. Maybe I should rethink this plan of making him into a world-class assassin, or of depending on him to be a world-class assassin. Oh wait, he's the only son of the Chinese mafia boss. If I want to control the Chinese mafia boss, why don't I just kidnap Yuta? I can do that. I just beat him down. My guys just took him into the back. He can just vanish. Hell, why don't I pretend to kill him up on stage to get Kiryu really angry, and then Yuta's body gets taken to the back, and oh, he's dead, so you're never going to see him again, Kiryu. Oh, but he's actually alive because we're using him as leverage against the Chinese mafia boss. No, it didn't happen like that. So you can see that because the narrative was obviously rewritten and that didn't get propagated back properly, it opens up these massive, massive holes in how this game can go, because none of these scenes make any sense once the reveal happens later. And that's why I'm so sure that these scenes were originally written to make him into a villain properly, and then they were sabotaged halfway through, and that's why it was such an interesting thing to study. It also gives me an opportunity to rant about the complete failure of the narrative. I mean, now you've heard it. Let me know if you disagree. See you around.